audience, fellow Facebook streams. Since I'm sharing, you can share it okay. Nice. Okay, share it on the platform. Just send you a link to share. My fellow brother, friend, and comrade in the liberation of Ambazonian people and our land, the chair of the National Executive Council of the AGOVC, Mr. Imma. You are welcome to the show. And today we'll be talking about geopolitics in West Africa, the lessons Ambazonia is taking from Ibrahim Traore, and what America must do moving forward as a major player in the globe. These are the topics that we're going to discuss upon. I know you and I will always talked about, we've always discussed on geopolitics. The reason that you and I do this is because Ambazonia is, we have to keep on updating our people and making sure that they understand what is happening. Because technically, what happens, we are not a silo. We are not living in a silo. The world is interconnected. And as we fight for the liberation of Ambazonia, we have to understand our interaction, our interconnection with the world to understand how to navigate through the difficulties and the challenges that the current world is facing. That's why you and I always present to our people topics on geopolitics, what's currently happening, how it impacts our revolution, how it impacts our people. So you are welcome to the show, the chair of the National Executive Council of the AGOVC.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and it's always a pleasure being on this platform. Always very educational, very intellectually provoking, and I enjoy every bit of the conversation and the education that we provide to our people. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks very much, comrade. Like I said, if we are, as we forge ahead in the liberation of our land, there are things that are interconnected in our quest, in the quest for our independence. We see a lot of things happening specifically in our continent, Africa. I would like both of us to talk a lot on the recent happening specifically. Maybe we'll take a little bit of a step back. The recent happening specifically in the AES. AES has been a focal point in defining the destiny of Africa in the current world that we live in, we see something very different happening in the Confederacy nations. So there has been a recent talk on the attempted assassination of Captain Ibrahim Traore. So when you look at the consistent attempt, and when you look at the key players participating or acting, I call them bad actors, when you look at their role in trying to take out Ibrahim Traore, why? What's the rationale, the real reason behind it? What do you think is the real reason behind it? Is it just that they want to topple him? Is it that he is not doing something good for his nation? Or what's your take, particularly with the recent, talk that came out from the diaspora, maybe from the US, or High General Langme, talking about or creating some false narrative around what Traore is doing with their wealth of their country, and then all of a sudden, in between that time, we see some few bought and paid sellouts in France in particular protesting against Ibrahim Traore, and the next minute we hear that there was an attempted, highly sophisticated coup on his life. So when you just try to connect these dots together, and let's talk more about that. So what is your take about that?
Yeah, thank you, comrade. Always great and insightful questions. I think we cannot look at the issues that are happening in the Sahel region in isolation of the strategy that the West has always had. And if we go back into history, one of the key major ways, look at like the British Isles as a whole, a very small, tiny island being able to, at one time, the empire was described as that the sun never sets on the empire, being able, one small, tiny island, being able to control this vast amount of the world's resources, the world's landmass. One of the ways that it did was if you imagine Kenya, I think Tanzania, most of British East African countries that were there, the way that they were able to control them were to bring soldiers from like India and have them fight wars or bring some kind of policing in these countries like Kenya, and then most of them ended up staying. So you have Indians now in Kenya. So they've had this strategy of not really fighting the wars themselves, conquering a small group of people and then using those groups of people to conquer other people and then controlling them and so on and so forth. What happened to Muhammad Gaddafi, the brother man in Libya? They brought in jihadis to provide the ground forces in Libya, while they use their air forces to provide coverage from the air to defeat Gaddafi. So same thing, to bring that home to your question. Same thing, they use people within to do the dirty work that is supposed to be done. Essentially, pay money to individuals to buy their loyalty. If you remember, one of the other coups that was being planned that was foiled, the soldiers that were involved in that coup, they had given them something around 5 billion francs CFA, and they reported that to their higher ups, their higher authorities, and those higher authorities then asked them to follow through with the plan, and then until the plan was dissolved and the people involved were then subsequently captured.
Okay.
So same thing that they're doing in with Ibrahim Traore. The essence for which they continue to do that, they found themselves in a situation where, if you look at Europe in its entirety, most of the resources in Europe are only located in probably areas like Finland and Norway. France itself does not have any natural resources. So Britain itself does not have any natural resources. Britain is a center of financial or of banking and other financial instruments like insurance, ship insurance that happens. That's most of the ways that they make their money today. So in order for them to secure both short-term and long-term resources for basically nothing, they have to find those somewhere else. So it is one of such places that they look for. It's obviously people that can defend themselves, like areas in the Sahel region. Um, and you have a situation where there is another power that foreign power that is involved there, but in this case trying to provide balance. This case we're talking here about the Russians. Without going too deep into that, we do know that the part of the reason for which you'd had the Western forces try to take down Ibrahim Traore has been because they're looking to curb the influence of the Russians, and now most recently Turkey that has also come on board. So in order to prevent that kind of expansion, they have to remove the individual that is the anchor of such expansion in in Burkina Faso, and then most of the other Sahel region. There is another piece that we will go into in details. I'm trying not to expand at this point, but there's another piece here, BRICS, which has to do a lot with BRICS. We will discuss this further in this conversation, but just briefly, one of the other reasons is because of the expansion of BRICS, and part of the pivot that the entire BRICS structure will provide is also along the lines of the expansion of these other countries within the Sahel region. Thank you, comrade. I hope that addresses the question.
Man, you touched on something that has always, you've opened up my mind. You touched on something that has always been bugging me. How comes we have a lot of Indians in East Africa? It's now that you just opened up my mind. The strategy has always been conquer a portion of another part of the world that has a big population, give them a little bit of incentive, and then you bring them over to maintain your continuous subjugation on areas that you have. You are not doing the fighting yourself, but you are using
Right.
other people, giving them, because I've always asked myself, how comes you have a lot of Indians in Uganda, Kenya, along the eastern coast of Africa? Now that you talk, I mean, to South Africa, that's now that you said that that's how
Exactly.
that's the system that the British used to be
Right.
able to really. Oh, okay,
Right,
that is
comrade. I
really.
mean, even now in the U.S. administration, you have individuals that talked about that they are immigrants. They were second generation immigrants here. Their parents were born in Africa, but they're of Indian descent. So I mean, that was one of the reasons for which you have a lot of Africans that are of Indian descent that basically their parents and grandparents grew up in India,
Oh,
in Africa.
in Africa.
We're Africans.
Wow,
Yeah.
wow. You know, when you break down these things, you need to understand how the global oppression of indigenous people have really been successful. You know, it's now that you just said it, and I went, okay. You know, there is something before coming to that. You realize that I just want you to, besides the expansion of Russia and its influence in the Sahel regions, don't you think that there is something even bigger than that? The ideology that Traore is preaching. So what can you talk? What can you say more about his ideology, and do you think that's the biggest threat that
Oh, absolutely.
the jackals they are facing now in Africa?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And it's even in line with what happened when you have individuals that stand up to the empire, that stand
Mhm.
up to the hegemon. You had that was Gaddafi. Gaddafi was very outspoken. He stood for what he stood for. You even as far we can go back as far as Muhammad Ali. They looked for a way, but it was so difficult for them to take him out. But people like Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr., when you have people that stand out with certain ideology, that bring a message of enlightenment, that bring a message of change, that help to educate people and build their intellect and empower them. That is a message of Traore. That is the message of the individual before, Captain, I forget his name, Thomas Sankara.
Thomas Sankara.
Thomas Sankara. So that kind of message threatens the hegemon, threatens the expansion. So it is that kind of ideology that Ibrahim Traore has, to just the fact of him standing up. I actually, when I watched the video of the presentation that he gave while he was in Russia, you could see there were some other like older African presidents there, kind of just kind of frowning, and you can interpret what was going on in their mind, like he doesn't know yet, he's still naive, but the guy has said, the fatherland or death that we shall win. So he's not afraid of anything that they can do to him. He's even talked about the fact that they've asked him, they presented almost like a threat that you know what happened to this other person that stood for what you're standing for. So yes, equally, like you're right, comrade. This is also his message, is his ideology. It is what he stands for. It is what he's bringing to his people and the people of Sahel. Right now, he actually represents a major freedom fighter of that is not only influencing the state of the spirit of people that are standing up for themselves in Africa, but also in the world. I watch videos of maybe this, in this case, someone in Australia that had his poster or posted all over in his residence.
Wow.
So that tells you that he has an influence beyond just the African continent.
Yeah. What makes him stand out, and is, he's out there globally. Do you have any idea what makes him stand out? Is it because of the exposure, or what do you think? Because when you look at the people like Gaddafi, you look at the people like Malcolm, they walked on the same, and Lumumba, they walk on the same path line. So what is the difference now with Traore doing the same thing, but and same messaging, but the way the world is receiving him is different? What makes you what's the difference between him and the other, heavy African freedom fighters like the Samora Machels that have fought to free Africa, and the Kwame Nkrumahs? What makes him different?
Very, very good question, Comrade Chief. I think that I will argue, in my opinion, that the world has changed significantly.
Okay.
You have a situation where the media was basically controlled by the West. One of the
Yep.
most important communication tool, or at least to make people informed tool, is the media. The
Hmm.
media can change mind. The media can send people to war. There is an individual that was interviewed in the war between going, or at least the conflict going on between Russia and Ukraine. The individual had left South America and was fighting on the Ukrainian side. He talked about the fact that he had been influenced significantly by the media, and he had been propagated. He thought that was what the president of Russia was doing to the Ukrainians, and he felt so bad about it, and that pushed him to volunteer to come and defend the Ukrainians. See for yourself, if you do not have a full knowledge and understanding of the situation, and just the kind of propaganda that the media can use to influence your emotions and influence you. So you have a situation today that the media, you can have information on the palm of your hands. And then this is another generation that you can even call them the internet generation. This is a generation that every day they get informed. They're watching what is happening in the Middle East, in Palestine, Gaza, at the palm of their hands. So, and also I think there is a change in a major shift in the human psyche, where there are some things that may have happened in the 60s that cannot be tolerated today. You have individuals that, I mean, they are out there, they are standing for what they believe is right, as opposed to just maybe paying lip service to it. Um, some of them are making sacrifices, getting on the streets, going to labor for what they believe it's the right thing to do. So I would say the shift in both communication, media, and also the human mentality, and we have a young generation today that is very engaged in what is happening in their surroundings.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah.
That's very you make a very powerful point, because we also experienced that in this revolution, in the Ambazonia revolution. We experienced the power of media. We saw how fighters were killed because of lies that were peddled in the media. We lost over 40 seasoned generals in Bui. So that's the power of media. You bring it very, you make it very clear, because in the days currently now, people have access to immediate information. People stream things live, and people have that judgment for themselves. But in those days, like we said, the difference between the Traore and Sankara and Lumumba was because they had the mainstream media as the only source of information. So the society was undergoing what was social engineering. So the possibility of social engineering nowadays is very difficult. And, we have to add our voice to this current situation, because there has never been a time where Africans can speak up to themselves. Now, with a tool available, before Gaddafi was taken out, there was social engineering at a global scale. The
Right.
same type of social engineering that existed if you are not really like a deep analyst to understand exactly what's going on in Ukraine war, that even the current president and the current administration itself is telling the truth about what actually was happening, as opposed to the previous administration. If you were not knee deep in understanding and doing a deep dive analysis, and you were believing the media, just what you said, you will keep on buying the hype of what the media was selling out. Now the current administration that comes into the United States of America is saying that no, all that was bullshit. The war wasn't supposed to happen. Even the president said it wasn't supposed to happen. We're not supposed to have this war. We're not supposed to be fighting a major power. You get it? That's the strength of the media. And then currently, you also see that, from what you said, there is minimal influence. People can judge things for themselves. They're not still buying into the hype of the media. There is also Africans globally that are very keen at following what is happening in Africa. So the game of lying, the same trope that they used in taking out Gaddafi cannot work this time around. Because Africans are really, I see people, I hear other Africans talking of going to Burkina Faso to fight, to defend him, to protect him, and it's, of which I think it's a good thing for Africa, because now we are beginning to be able to fight for our own selves, speak for our own selves. We don't give other people the avenue to talk on our behalf. And I want to ask you something that's been going on for a while. When you see, for instance, the US general that came out and made that big lies, because Traore himself, his wealth is being measured. He has no wealth. He is not accruing wealth. He
Right.
has
Yeah.
nothing. Yeah.
Yeah. He actually did not take the presidential salary. He
Yeah.
decided to stay with his salary as a captain.
So how can someone openly lie to the public when it is very clear you have other tools to see that this guy has no wealth? He's not accruing any wealth. You openly lie as a trope to go and attack his nation. So and that information is out there. You see real actual work taking place. So there are other things that are happening in that country that I don't know why you have a clue about it. Besides the fact that they kicked out the French, they kicked out their media. What has recently spurred? Can you really highlight some of the key things that matter? When you talk about, nationhood or death, what has he done to inspire his people? Can you throw more light on that?
I mean, even as recently as maybe 2 weeks ago or so, he purchased more additional supplies, military hardware, including drones from Turkey, and together with Mali, that kind of supplies, because Algeria has been very hesitant. A lot of the terrorists they are being used by the empire have a lot of them have escaped and gone to Algeria, which borders most of Mali.
Mhm.
And so Mali and Burkina Faso, they order all of those additional drones, and that threatened Algeria. Algeria had positioned itself as one of the major military um, nations in the region. So by having those drones, they claim that it was starting to threaten their military prowess. Especially now, you have the entire Sahel region put together. Um, but in terms of, I mean, there is many things that he's done for his people, including just offering free housing, which is currently being built. They've had so many contracts with Chinese that are now building the infrastructure from roads. They've been ordering even their own capital equipment, in this case, like construction material, and training their own citizens in order to be able to use them for construction, not just rely on Chinese technical know-how and labor. Um, they have built in research institutes. They are gradually industrializing their economy. Some people may laugh at this, but they now have like a toilet paper manufacturing company that is homegrown.
Yeah.
I saw another video where this individual was producing tire from scratch,
Yeah.
so they don't really have to import tires anymore. They have tomato factories, so basically industrializing. So that's part of why you have the coup, because if you can stop, if I mean, if you see where Africa was, there was one time where the Moors actually ruled Europe. They brought civilization to Europe,
Yep.
but that history is not being taught to us, because imagine that if Africans can remember their history, that at one time they were in the status that they were
In charge
the
of the world.
leader, right? That can, how much that can spare them towards being back to where to that kind of position. And in fact, I have my own some theory that there is this whole assumption that that everybody basically, due to DNA, originated from Africa, which is true. There is a portion of our DNA that points to Africa, a portion of everybody's, but there is also DNA strands that is not found in not every other human beings,
Mm-hmm.
and that distinguishes us
As
Black
race.
Africans from everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And that tells you too that at one point, I mean, I would argue that the Garden of Eden was actually located. I mean, where are all the resources
No,
located?
but that is for sure, because everything, even the ones that are going to be used in the next 1,000 years in Africa,
Right.
is in
There are some
Africa.
parts
Yeah, because that's the Garden of Eden. And at times
exactly.
I ask this question. At times I ask this question: when you call Middle East, Far East, or West, where's the center?
Exactly.
You get it? The center is
Exactly.
Africa. The center is Africa. You have the northern pole, the southern pole, Middle East, West. The center of the world is Africa.
It
That's the
would be in
Garden of
Africa.
Eden. Yeah, and then you make it. You bring up a key point. Even talking about Traore, this guy took his GDP from 18.2 billion to about 21.8
Yeah,
billion.
it's now 22 billion. Yeah.
20,
Well,
22
yeah,
billion
22. Yeah,
within a very short space of time.
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and then I'm just listening out. What one of the that recently, did you hear that recently? Did you hear that recently they discovered
Oil.
gold? I mean oil, worth about 50 billion barrels of light crude.
Right.
Gazprom, 50 billion barrels of light crude, not heavy crude,
And
light crude in Burkina Faso.
and then see how that message of the U.S. military. I think he's a general by looking at the number of stars that he had, and
Yeah,
look at when the message comes in.
came
So
out. Yeah,
so you start to see a parallel between all of
yeah,
these successes and all of this information and the presence of Gazprom, and
yeah.
then it, and then that story starts, and then you see the coup d'état being made. So all of these things, you start to put together the pieces.
And then you look at when even besides that, one of the key things that threatens them the more, is one of those. Burkina Faso has a gold mining factory where you process your gold. Same to Mali. So, and then the world, the strongest commodity now, as with all this turmoil, is gold. Gold is one of the strongest commodities. So, but in the past, France was just taking everything out of their country. Now they are holding back and mining those gold to strengthen their economy. Those are some of the things that you look at it and you say, okay, for real, That's why they are trying to take this guy out. He is really claiming self-sufficiency. He is claiming real independence for his nation. And then there is something I also wanted to do. These other bad actors around, there are other bad actors around his country, like Ivory Coast, Benin. So why are they playing that role?
Yeah,
Just throwing it out to you. Yeah, why are they playing that role?
one of the tactics that this the hegemon and the empire has used has been basically threats or even assassination. Look at what happened to the Tanzania president Magufuli.
Hmm.
Magufuli argued against this was a scientist himself argued against the COVID vaccine and
Hmm.
everything that he was doing to improve his economy, and somehow his death just was very sketchy
Hmm.
for someone like him. And they have, like we talked about this earlier, that they have used all of these terrorist sets that they come and position in your country. They ask you to do something and you do not, then they send the terrorists to come and terrorize you. They think, like, you look at what Boko Haram has been doing in northern Cameroon. They're probably asking for something, and then they use that as pressure for the administration. So same thing with Benin. Each time Benin has resisted the pressure, they've sent in terrorists, terrorize the state. Um, but Ivory Coast, because the president there was basically put in by the French,
Yep.
it's not until recently that they've started to fall out, but put there by the French, all of its policies had been in favor of France, essentially.
Hmm.
And Ivory Coast has been the pathway into Ivory Coast to, sorry, into Burkina Faso to cause all this havoc. The first set of mercenaries, if you remember, I think there was like 19 of them that were arrested. They all came from, they were all mercenaries from Ivory Coast. Sorry, yes, from Ivory Coast, that were arrested in Mali, and they were there for like 9 months jailed. So Ivory Coast is the platform for which they use in order to terrorize these countries.
So Alice, and it's a disgrace and shameful to even be an Ivorian, because
All right.
how can you allow this open treachery or betrayal of your people of Africans? Because now they're using their area, because the recent coup that we're talking about, all those who escaped ran into Ivory Coast.
For protection.
Yeah, those that were they nabbed a couple of them, but some of them escaped into Ivory Coast. And Traore has been saying that they have had interceptions of communications with the French, with a base actually in Ivory Coast, and that's where they are grooming all those terrorists and pushing them
And
into
and
their
and there's
country.
another one too in Benin.
In
Yeah.
Benin. Yeah, it's really humiliating and disgraceful. I think it's but proper that the country itself, the people should rise up and kick out the government, because they can't keep on destabilizing not only Burkina Faso, but they're also destabilizing their country. You don't have that sovereignty. And one of the things that Traore has done also, before he even came to power, his country was they controlled about less than 50% of the country was under their government. He has,
Exactly.
yeah, he has pushed out the rebels to about, I think they control about 80% of their land now.
Right.
You get it?
And
That's how
for Mali, almost 90% now.
90%. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is a good work that the AS nation are. I mean, they own they own their sovereignty, and the message that is coming out of the AES is so strong that it puts other African leaders into shame. Like you rightfully said, the meeting that they had in Russia. You see, when he was talking, there was a lot of the others were jittering. They were ashamed because he was exposing them. Now, there's also one besides Mali, I mean besides Ivory Coast and Benin. There is also one bad player in the eastern part of Africa. What can you
William.
Yes, what can you say about that, and why is he acting out against the sovereignty of Africa.
I have never understood. Like when we started this conversation, we talked about how the empire and the hegemon is really very good at actively using other people to do the dirty work that they do, and then at the end of the day, they keep their hands very clean.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Look at right now. If we mention the United States is it's acting as a negotiator between the war that is going on, or the conflict between the Russians and the Ukrainians. Meanwhile, on the other hand, the United States is the one that is providing the weapons and the surveillance and targeting, according to the Wall Street Journal,
Mm-hmm.
um, of and the targeting that is happening in the Russian, so amongst the Russian soldiers. So how can you, on the one hand, be a negotiator, on the other hand, be the person that is providing
Providing.
the all of the weapons?
Mm-hmm.
Now, going back to the use of mercenaries, Haiti, basically they wanted to control the resources of Haiti. Haiti is said to have um, meteorites that had probably hit the earth and contain material that is used in reducing heat when airplanes or jets take off to go to space. Um, so basically, they take Kenyan soldiers, pay them almost like mercenaries. Ruto sends them, and they go in there and do the work that, at the end of the day, is not benefiting Kenyans. It's basically benefiting the people that are looking for that resource. Um, so I cannot really understand what would be the motivation of such sellout. You had like the previous president of Ghana too, Nana Akufo-Addo,
Akufo. Mm-hmm.
doing exactly the same thing. Um, the good thing now is that we've had John Mahama
Yeah.
come in, and so far still watching him. But I mean, he's been aligning himself with the Sahel states, doing something more positive for his country, even though he's not been very firm in asking the presence of foreign troops to leave his country yet.
Yeah.
So maybe depending on the kind of contract that was, the kind of agreement that was signed, but
Mm-hmm.
at least the decisions that he's been making in nationalizing his gold mines and stuff like that. Going back to Ruto, even when he comes in and make comments, he was the only one that supported what is happening in Gaza, when everyone else stood against it. I mean, even in its entirety, like the African Union stood against it, and so it's sometimes it's for someone to sell their soul that way.
I tend to see it. It seems as if a cultural problem. They are people that have no dignity, no integrity, no decency, because it's not just Ruto. Where was Kano, Namdi Kano captured? He was picked up in
Kenya.
in Kenya. They have not been really good players as far as people vying for the independences of Africa is concerned. And still talking about it, do you know? I was looking deep into why they banned Julius Malema from going to Kenya. Do you have a clue as to why they banned him from going to Kenya?
I do know that he criticized them and pointed out these issues that we are talking about, and called the Kenyan, and that was when the Kenya almost allowed for, or maybe allowed for, a presence of NATO office. Um, so he criticized them for that as well. So not really very sure. Besides, beyond that.
I know we're having some internet connection issues.
Oh, can you hear me?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you very well. Yes, I can hear you 5 on 5.
Okay, I don't know. You're breaking up. I don't know what's causing the breakup. Um.
I can hear
Okay,
you
you
very
there now?
well.
Okay, yeah. Sorry. Okay, I can hear you now. Okay, you are back on the screen. So can
Oh,
you were talking about you know his role. You said we talked about him and why they banned Julius Malema. He was criticizing him on what?
oh yeah, sorry. I was noting that he criticized when he allowed
Ruto.
Julius Malema criticized William Ruto for allowing a NATO office to be open, and I think he ended up getting appointed or like being called like a NATO non-member ally, something they
Hmm.
give you that title just to kind
Hmm.
of buy your loyalty, essentially.
Hmm.
And one of the things, but I'm not really sure in that, because he also talked about these issues that we're talking about, where you have almost like a sellout,
Uh-huh.
calling him up for it. Um,
Yeah.
without really hold that thought, comrade. I want to mention this thought really quick, this issue really quickly. How the you you have this, the US comes into your country and sponsors individual politicians, and they win elections, and basically that's why they push for this whole issue notion of democracy, even though it might not necessarily be democratic.
Yep.
Look at what happened to Nigeria and their president.
Hmm.
We do know that basically he was nominated as opposed to elected
Yep.
by the Nigerian people.
Yeah.
So, but then they use these non-governmental organizations and to hide the whole path of funding
Hmm.
and push candidates, push political changes, and by the time you know it, the entire government is filled with individuals that are positioned there by foreign governments,
Yep.
and you're asking yourself, what is really the motivation of this individual acting this way?
Hmm.
Um, you have individuals in the Kenyan parliament criticizing Ibrahim Traore,
Traore.
calling
Yeah.
him a joint. You're asking yourself, what could really be the motivation
Hmm.
that, seeing what this individual is doing,
Hmm.
I mean, seeing what Ibrahim Traore is doing for his people,
Hmm.
what would make you, or how does he merit that kind of criticism?
Hmm.
So unbelievable. Yeah, sorry, you were going to say something.
No, you nail out, you bring out some key points. Like I said, it seems as a cultural thing that can easily be bought over. They don't have their minds to themselves. You know, deep down, one of the biggest scare that not only it's not from Kenyans actually, it's from those major powers in control of Kenya, because Kenya is not being controlled by Kenyans. The best lands in Kenya is owned by whites who were, after the Second World War, a lot of them, there was nothing left in Britain. They had to send them to go out to the old former British or the British colonies and make out their lives for themselves, or scavenge in those areas to get a better living for themselves. So a lot of them settled in Kenya, and they took the best lands in Kenya. You know,
Zimbabwe and South Africa,
yeah, yeah,
similar situations, and
yeah.
that's what is necessitating that whole conflict or grief between scuffle, I would call it,
Mhm.
between the South African government now and the American government.
Yes. So Julius Malema has always been an ardent proponent of taking back the land by the indigenous people. So his move into Kenya was supposed to be something that was supposed to start spurring up the Kenyans to start looking deep into their lands, because the richest part of Kenya, the best lands, arid lands, are all in the hands of the white, the British people, who settled there and called themselves Kenyans. So that was also a big scare when you see such persons start going into a place like Kenya. Those handlers of Kenya, they saw a big problem coming up. Not only him protesting or condemning Kenya, but also they were like, okay, this guy is coming to put the real estate into question, because those places were taken and were never bought. They just took them during the Colonial era. So Ruto going there, Malema going there, was supposed to start the handlers in Kenya. They were already scared, and they started looking at, okay, this guy is coming and he's going to start agitating the Kenyans. Start looking back into the land problem, because most of those people that have those best lands are British people who don't own, they never bought those lands. They were never paid for. Those lands, they never paid for those lands. They took them. Just as they took lands in South Africa, just as they took land in Zimbabwe for free. That's one of the things that they banned him. They were scared that, oh, this troublemaker is already coming to Kenya, and there's a possibility that it will bring up the land problem. It is still, that's one of the reasons that even stopped him from going there. Now, coming to Ruto, when Ruto came to power, He was barking a lot about big talk. He went around to pop. They surely just pulled. It's just the young his chains. They said, "We know you have to act right, or you have to act right and dance according to our tune, or we shake you off from that position." That's why you saw him undergoing a 360 degrees turn, or it's a 180, and started facing the opposite direction. Because you cannot match the Ruto of now with the Ruto that came to power. They are two different people. They use him. He's the only African that came and condemned the Palestinians. He's the first person to condemn the AES state. He has always taken the opposite side of things. He is the only African nation that has offered to send his soldiers to go into Haiti with a pretext that they are going to bring peace in Haiti, not knowing that I call those guys in Haiti. They are revolutionaries. They are fighting for the heart and soul of their land.
The land.
Yes, the spirit of the spirits of Desalegn and the rest is in them. They want to own and control the same ideology you see in Traore. They want to own and control the destiny of Haiti.
Of Haiti.
Yeah, so you will see the mainstream media, they'll be cooking up stories about them. And then Kenya buys into that. Then it's the only country, even Canada, they asked Canada US asked Canada to go and play the role that Kenya is playing. They said no. Other CARICOM countries, they asked them to go in, they said no. It's only this sellout, the name of Ruto, that had to send Kenyans to go and die to serve other people's interests. As you rightfully said, they gave him the title of non-aligned NATO member. What has been the track record of NATO in the world?
All the devastation everywhere that they've gone.
Yep.
From Libya to Afghanistan to Iraq.
Yeah.
Now we see what is happening in Gaza, even though
Yugoslavia also.
Serbia, all of those
and
countries.
Then they bring you in and they are using you as body and your bodies to go serve the hegemon. You get it? So at times we need to expose it, because you hear him, and as you rightfully said, they will buy off or pay off some parliamentarians. This young dude, about 40-something years old, young man, early 40s, he goes and is speaking crap about Traore. He makes comments that, oh, he used to be his fan. He's no longer there. He's not treating people. I mean, with all the information out there, how else can you take care of your people? Why should they always have some bad actors in that country? I mean, it is shocking. Which parliamentarian has come out? As you rightfully said, we look at a country like AU. Look at a country like look at a organization like AU. Look at an organization like ECOWAS. That's why they can easily use them, because the people who sponsor them, half of their budget, the EU, they can easily use them to manipulate them. Look at how they came hard on the AES nation, because they are not. I mean, there's one thing that Africans need to have to obtain and maintain our dignity and integrity.
Right.
It's good that we better go and stay under a thatched house that we own and control, and we make determination for our continent, than living in a skyscraper not built by us, and those who build the skyscrapers, like they said, the Chinese also bought the AU house at one point in time that was built and offered to us for free. Than to go and live in the air condition that you don't own the air, they can control it, they can shut it, they can open it at any time.
They control you. They tell you to do this, and if you don't do it, they do what they need to do.
Yeah. It's better we go under a thatched house and stay there in the thatched house that we own and control our destiny, than going and living in skyscrapers that we don't own, and they take everything away from you. That's why we have been so dysfunctional in Africa. That's why we have stayed the way we have stayed. Even the creation of, they always try to coerce everything that we have. They come and they coerce everything that is original, and that's why you see the onslaught on the AES nation. So,
and in addition to that, the whole idea of you relying on something that can be taken away by threat. If you look at this whole AGOA thing, because I was asking myself, why is it that South Africa not just go ahead and move forward and make the rules that look at what the US does. At one time, the African American population in several communities, especially including, like, let's just say New York. There's another one in Kansas area that they call Black Wall Street.
Yep.
Essentially, these were very progressive communities that were doing very well. Then, because they were doing very well, the hegemon basically, look at where Central Park is located, was a very thriving community of Black people. So they basically erased the entire community and created a park just to erase that whole. It goes back even to what we were talking about, comrade, at the beginning of this conversation, where you try to erase an idea and a notion to the extent that it never sprouts, because when it sprouts, it encourages it educates people and it encourages them to stand for what they believe in. So basically, the U.S. In these places, they erase that whole idea that Black people built. They had a Black Wall Street. They had thriving communities. They wipe it off
Yep.
and then create a park. Then today you go to that park, you never even, if that history is not told, you will not even know what has
Okay.
happened there. So I'm asking myself, why doesn't South Africa just go ahead and say, this land, but you came here and found this land, you did not pay for it. It belonged to the communities here, villages that were here before, and you take this compensation, or you will kick you out anyway, because your forefathers did not pay for it. You can't own it. Where is the original deed of your purchase? If you can produce it, then basically they take it, because in some countries, even like in the US, they will just pass a law in Congress and that becomes law. That's how they did,
Yeah.
especially in the southern states, to
Yeah.
enact laws that basically just put Black people. Because, I mean, in the 18th century, African Americans, Black people actually were in Congress. Their numbers went all the way to
Of
100,
course.
and then they systematically used the laws to
To eradicate
gradually
them.
to eradicate them slowly and slowly. Because previously, even before slavery, Black people were here. They own
Yep.
land. They were progressive, and then the
They came from West Africa.
yeah,
They came
exactly,
from West Africa because I think if you read the work of Ivan van Septima, he said there's a book. He said we were here before.
right,
Africans used to move. They used to migrate from West Africa into the Americas.
into the Americas, and
Yeah.
there were actually artifacts,
Yeah.
African artifacts within the Indian community,
Yeah.
natives that had welcomed Africans far beyond before Christopher Columbus got here.
Yeah. Yeah. So those are there's something you just said that we really need to really do a total overhaul of our educational system, particularly as we
Oh,
gear towards
absolutely,
our independence, because
absolutely.
you know that most of the inventions, even if you were back home in Africa, in Amazonia, you see inventions that were done by Black people. They have white sounding names. So the things we are going to be doing in Ambazonia is making sure that we put those names and those faces. And we start from the kindergarten, showing our children that look at this man. This is the face. This is what he created. It does something to the psyche of the children. We had some
Oh,
of the, yeah, we had some of the,
absolutely,
yeah, we had
absolutely.
some of the inventions when we were back home, but we could not match that invention with the image, because all the inventions we grew up with understanding was we had the names, they were white sounding names, but we never knew that some of those inventions were Black people in America who created that, who invented those things. You know,
I will stand by my word that over 90% of these inventions were actually done by Black people.
yeah,
Unfortunately, they were prohibited from
patterning.
patterning their work, so
Yep,
they had to use someone else to pattern that work. And then at the end of the day, they ended up taking credit.
yeah,
Before the Wright brothers could fly a plane, there were African Americans or Black people that actually already did those experiments and flew planes.
yeah, yeah.
Before,
But we don't know that. But
no,
we hear about all that. Yeah,
exactly.
there will be a total overhaul of our educational system, because, like we rightfully said, it still boils down to one thing. Once they discover like, what is happening in Traore is the ideology. Do you know, since this guy came to power and the steps that they are taking together with Assimi Goita and Tiani in Niger, it has spurred other African countries. You can hear now, Senegal was able to tell the French to leave his country.
Right.
How do you call him? Chad was able to tell the U.S. and the French forces to back out of his country.
Yeah, Debbie. And
Yes.
there are conversations of monetary like the CFA that have been had today. Something that was like a taboo during Gaddafi's time. You could not
Yeah.
even mention the fact that about the CFA.
Yeah.
Today, conversations have been
They're
had
going on,
with the possibility of actually changing that
changing
currency.
it. Yeah. So you see that that's why they're attacking him in particular, because his ideology. Okay, look at the new lady who came here. She's in Namibia. He's now also asking the question of, oh, who are in my country? If you have your visa, your visa is overstayed, you leave my country because this
Right.
is our land. So as Traore keeps on speaking, what is resonating in Africa is sovereignty. Sovereignty. You get it? Because he is saying that sovereignty or debt. And that message is resonating across the continent. We need to own what we don't come. Africans don't go to other parts of the world and try to lay claim on their resources. Africans don't have any military base out of Africa. So the question becomes this: why are those military bases in Africa? Is it their land? That's the question that Traore asked. And then now it opens up people's minds. I think there's one guy also in other country in South Africa. The guy just came in recently. He said, I think there's some US forces there also, some foreign force there. He said they are going to leave his country. There's one young guy just came. I think he's in Namibia or Botswana. He said it's in Botswana. I think he said the foreign force are going to
I
leave my
think it's
country.
I think it's Botswana.
Yeah, they have to leave
Yeah,
my
he,
country. I
yeah,
don't see.
he was at the inauguration as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you see, that is actually is the echo that is going, and that's why he becomes now a pivotal a target. But what is happening is that us Africans globally, we have to speak up and we have to shame the people, and we should be prepared to take any form of action to protect him. We are the only ones that can protect, because someone like Gaddafi was alone. He was alone. Nobody stood for him. Africans were not talking about it. Nobody protected him. We allowed the ecosystem to be controlled and contained. And then we saw a whole messiah in Africa taken down and killed in front of us. We are, as rightfully said, we are in a different generation. We must speak to our issues and be the controllers of our destiny. People are not going to determine what is right for us. That's why you see across the globe, Africans are speaking up. You can't come and try to kill. I mean, the fun is that, one thing that surprises me is that the people who are attempting to take out this guy's life, have they not learned? Where's Blaise Compaoré? Where's Blaise Compaoré? He's in jail, right?
Yeah, he was there giving excuses. I mean, he came in and did all these speeches to ask for an apology, which I don't think that the family of Thomas Sankara ever accepted.
But he's in jail. I think they jailed him. If I'm not mistaken, they jailed him, because no matter how long it takes, there will be justice. So those who are attempting and thinking that they're going to take him out, take Traore out, what happened to Compaoré is going to happen to you, because they don't forget. They don't forget it. That's why Compaoré is where he is now. So whoever is thinking that they are going to come after him or come after Traore and think that he's going to survive, I think the population has seen and tasted what leadership is. They are thriving. Look at roads sprouting across their country, development taking place. So you think that if you are being sponsored to take him out, you think you're going to stay in power? I doubt it. And the fun is this conversation of, oh, we're going to go out and we're going to collect land mills, saying that we're making preparation. It's so humiliating, because still, you said that, and not long ago they organized a coup. Where does it put us? In a very bad spot. It puts the US in a very bad spot. Is that what we sell out to the world? Coups? Someone that's doing good and people are seeing the goodness of what he is doing. So when go ahead, comrade.
Yeah, I just want to add this too, that there is I don't know if that's where you were trying to branch, but there is another big picture here that is happening in the entire. If I go too far, bring me back to
Okay.
to the conversation. But
Okay.
there's another big issue that is happening in the rest of the world that is um, that falls within America's strategic interest. So if you look at, they are trying to maintain. So the whole issue comes down to what BRICS is equally doing. They're trying to go to war with Iran. Iran, Russia, and China provides the basis for what is, I mean, a strong basis for basically the countries of the South.
Hmm.
Without them, the countries of the South would not be powerful enough to stand against the hegemon and the empire. So, how else do you weaken the countries of this? I mean, to basically get to the status quo where you had that unipolar moment, without really going after China, Russia, and now Iran.
Hmm.
The reason Iran is because Iran too is positioned where the Belt and Road, it's actually the pivot for where the Belt and Road Initiative will be going through, like all the way. If you come from India and the Atlantic Ocean, you go through Iran to get to Europe. From Russia, you come through the Southern Caucasus through Iran. From China, goods are going to go. So Iran is actually a basis and an anchor for what they're trying to do. So
Okay.
Iran provides over 20% or 25% um, of oil that goes into China to power the Chinese economy. So how else
Okay.
do you weaken the Chinese economy without basically, I mean, where when Iran is still standing? So go after Iran. You take away 20% of the power that goes into
Manufacturing.
China, into Chinese manufacturing. So that's one angle. They are talking about negotiating peace with Russia. If they are really wanting to negotiate peace with Russia, basically stop arming Ukraine or providing the
Ukraine.
weapon, because the war ends within, say, a month after you stop providing weapons. So the whole idea is just to keep the war going, to
Going.
continue to look for ways to destabilize. They still believe that they can destabilize and break Russia. So initially, the idea was to break Russia and then use Russian the influence that would and the power that would be provided from Russia, and then they think
Work with
India
China.
is already in their side, India on their side, and then to push into China using. I mean, like they tried using Georgia before to fight Russia. That didn't work. Russia crushed it within probably just about 2 weeks. That was done. Um, I have seen individuals argue that this war has taken three years. Russia is now strong enough. First of all, Russia is not really fighting a war. Russia is, because if this was a true war, they could wipe out the entire Ukrainian territory in just, I mean, with no. So the reason I was talking about, I brought this up to, and how it impacts the Sahel region, is because in order to have that influence in the countries of the South, the Russians have equally moved their influence from Chad, moving towards the Sahel states, AES. So, what other better way to stop their progress than to look for a way to come into Burkina Faso and then start going back into Mali, Niger, because that's where France and Europe fits.
Hmm.
There have been times that I've actually wondered if the US is not even going after Europe too, because how else would you bomb the power supply into Germany
Hmm.
and then put tariffs on all of your friends and stuff without, if you're not planning to weaken the economy? So that way, at the end of the day, because when an economy is weak, then they listen to you, just like they've done to most of the African countries. They've
Hmm.
made them dependent on, if I make you dependent on me, then basically when I give you instructions, then you follow.
Hmm.
So that's another key way that I think that the hegemon and the empire is trying to maintain its grip over the unipolar system and the unipolar moment.
Yeah.
Now, if that is that going to work, that's another. I don't. Let's not move too far. But if you want to go there, we can have that conversation too.
Yeah. Just bringing up this issue. Yeah, you're right. Like, you are, you rightfully said it. You rightfully put it into context. Is um trying to slow down the multipolar system, because one of the multipolar pillars is the AES and the influence of the trio. You know, uh, I think them trying to go after the AES is like trying to slow down the multipolar, the multipolar progression. But
Right.
yeah, as you rightfully said, um, it is something that they would, they, it I mean, it is, it's uh, now it comes to this question that I want to ask you. We are in a multipolar world. No arguments or question about that. We know that there are fragments within the country. You know, you and I live in the states. Yeah, we consider the states as our second home. It has given us, you know, certain benefits that you and I, when we talk, we appreciate the fact that we have that benefit and we can see from multiple dimensions. And you know, recently the Secretary of State of the current administration openly stated that we are now in a new era of multipolarity, and though some parts of the system that we have lived and benefited from the unipolar world, they don't want to come into that acceptance of the fact that we are in a multipolar world. So the question I have to ask you, because we are diving into the same thing that you talked about now, the issue of trying to contain multipolarity. So, and we with the current happenings, the tariff wars, the Ukraine war, and everything. You and I think we are well informed or versed on how we gather or analyze our information. We are realizing that we are really we are spiraling down. I mean, at full speed, and why? Because the old guards, they still believe that they can apply the old tools to maintain unipolarity, but the tools are all worn out, and there is nothing that they can do to stop multipolarity. How? Now the question becomes this. You and I love our second home. The question becomes this. What can diehard Americans, those who love this country, what can they do to usher themselves into having a say in the multipolar world that is unstoppable? What can you say about that? How do we try to let the old guards understand that there's a new approach? And where do you think America can find its place in the multipolar world where its voice can be heard? So what can you have that conversation with me? Can you give me a mind or your mind piece as far as that is concerned?
Yeah, sure. Very, very, very good observation and good question. I think that we've come to a moment where we need to acknowledge that the unipolar moment is over, that now is multipolarity. And even some people have described it as multi-nodal, and meaning that there are nodes of control or nodes of influence around the world as opposed to multipolarity.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so because otherwise you would basically have the destruction of the entire world. You have China may not have that many nuclear weapons. I think they say about 400 compared to 4,000 and 5,000 and 6,000, 5,000 for the US and about 6,000 for the Russians. You don't need that many to destroy the entire world.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to come to an acceptance that we've gotten to a place where um, hard wars can no longer be possible. So when you come to that acceptance, two things that I would say. One being that there have been a lot of misinformation or miseducation of the American citizenship, in terms of the fact that it is just now that a lot of people are finding out what is really happening in the Middle East, the truth about the entire or an understanding of the situation there. And then, so a lot of Americans are not informed of anything that happens outside of maybe their immediate cities, let alone their states.
Hmm.
So we are propagandized with all this information about America's exceptionalism.
Hmm.
So one thing that has happened is communication that the internet has provided a forum for which, if you see what has been going on that China has done in retaliation of or in relation to these whole tariff issues, it's
Hmm.
exposed basically the fact that all of these things are done in China is provided when TikTok was first banned, or at least there was the notion out there that it could be banned. Um, uh, China provided a platform for which a lot of TikTok users then migrated to the Chinese platform,
Red Note.
Red Node, and then
Yeah.
there they found out exactly that China was not filled with a lot of peasants, that they were equally individuals that lived there
Hmm.
in very advanced society, advanced environments, and things like that.
Hmm.
So when we come to that understanding of being able to see the world for what it is right now, I think that it will open up the opportunity for us to think differently. The good thing is that the young people right now in all other countries are starting to look at things differently. Look at what
Hmm.
is happening in college campuses. They are
Hmm.
no longer accepting what they are being told, even under such serious pressures.
Okay.
Yet they still go out and protest, and they are. I mean, the influence of money is always going to be there, but now you have the people that are now asking for something different.
Hmm.
Now the US cannot control the rest of the world. What can we do about it, or how can we approach it? The
Hmm.
US remains. I mean, there is still some. China puts out maybe 2 million engineers every graduation season. At the same time, the US still has a base for which it can still be very competitive. That level of competition is not lost. I
Hmm.
think they need to go back to what made them great.
Hmm.
Um, what I mean by that is, if you see what China has done over the years, instead of us investing in wars, instead of us investing um, in media campaigns to squash freedom of choice, freedom of liberties, and the freedoms that have been enjoyed all the way through to now, hitherto, I think that money can better be invested in research. It can be invested in production capacity. It
Hmm.
can be invested in infrastructure development. So all of those things that made us to get to where, if you see what I think is FDR did in the 30s, they
Hmm.
came out with this Marshall Plan of connecting through highways
Hmm.
all of America. That's when most of the highways were built, connecting all the major states and major cities in this
Hmm.
country. Why
Hmm.
can't they think about things like that instead of increasing the military budget and increasing the military industrial complex?
Hmm.
So it is by acknowledging that these powers are here to stay,
Hmm.
including, say, Russia and India, and how we can cooperate and exist and coexist with them, that we can be able to be successful. Now, let me say one last thing comment before you take over.
It's okay.
Um,
Go ahead.
I think that we have to go to a place where we can these nodes of control have their sphere of influence. For example,
Hmm.
the US has the Monroe Doctrine, where
Hmm.
it says in its hemisphere it would remain the major controlling power, like what
Hmm.
they're doing from having influence from Greenland through Canada all the way to South America. And then you would have a situation where Russia basically has influence in its own immediate environment. And then China has influence over its immediate environment as well. So everybody respecting each other. And if you have the growth or evolution of China, took maybe like 30 years to get to where it is. Africa as a continent can get there too, and has its own sphere of influence. Unfortunately, you still have very divided Africa. You have countries like Kenya who are siding with the influence of the empire, Morocco siding with the influence of the empire after what is the Sahelian state that was
Hmm.
Sahrawi is
Yeah.
recognized as part of Morocco.
Hmm.
And then now you have Algeria moving towards maybe against the hegemon trying to connect itself as a country of the South. So with that division, it'll be difficult for us as Africans in that sphere to remain united and also do something in to strengthen Africa as a whole. So, but it's a good question you ask. So I hope that does address it.
Yeah, if I can have a take on that, you know, we still have the financial power as a nation, our second home, to make things right. But the way we are steering the country, the nation, the old goons, I think even if we continue with that, even with the financial power, we are going to crash. You asked my opinion about what we need to do as a country, our second home. I would say this. What is China doing? Because China is unstoppable. What is China doing? That's what we are supposed to be asking. It fits into one of the things that you said. China is practicing the win-win strategy. They come to your country, they figure out that you need some dire infrastructure. They work with you. Now this question that they always talk about, oh, China is exploiting other parts of Africa. No. Blame Africans for having poor negotiators. Don't blame China. I'll say it openly. Africans should position themselves to have better negotiators. China doesn't come and take your things for free. We can say, oh, China is exploiting Africa. Exploiting us how? If they come to get something from you and you don't have good negotiators to be able to assess what China wants and match it proportionally with what they are offering to you, and also ensure that there are renewable terms for those things, where you have to reevaluate and reassess as time goes on whether the deal holds before you sign up on those things. It's just like you and I talked about in one of our shows. We talk about one company that came to the Ambazonia and they were to take about thousands upon thousands of hectares of land, and the Republic of Cameroon was ready to sell it off till the people had to fight. There was an NGO that fought and fend off that particular company that came to take that land from the indigenous people.
Right.
You get it? Yeah.
Right.
So if you don't have, but the government was ready to sell.
Absolutely.
For trinklets, you get it?
Absolutely.
So if you don't have people that love your country and that can negotiate on behalf of, look, for example, now you look at a place like Burkina Faso, even they are striking deals with people. The royalty stays to the country, the ownership is the country. You are only renting and sharing with them. You don't own it.
Right.
They have nationalized their entire land. They own it.
Right.
So if you don't have good negotiators, blame yourself. Don't blame China. That's the point I have to say. That's an asset I have to say. Okay, now, with our second home, people should get out of the mentality of thinking that they can use the hammer to control the world. That time is gone. You can use your propaganda to spur up wars and take people's resources, like in Libya. That time is past. What we have to figure out is because we will never compete with China with the way China is going and what they are doing. China is on a very powerful winning trail. The only way that our country, our second home, can compete with China is imitate what China is doing. We have the financial power, we have the knowledge, and we have the ability to revive our technology to get to the point where we can rival with China. For instance, like we said, there is no will. If there is the will, the current administration is openly taking out taking out money from research institutes, taking out money from education. Those are areas you are supposed to be pouring in resources.
Exactly.
Relieving students from student loans.
Exactly.
Encouraging research and development. Focusing on that, because that's what China did for the past 30 years.
Right. Exactly. They were sending their students to Ivy League universities and government scholarship, educating them.
Yeah, educate them. They take the knowledge and the information back to China. They build. But what are we doing? We are getting school. We are getting all the funding for research. We are getting all the funding for financial assistance to help develop. For research institutions.
And today, right, I mean, as we speak, there is a conversation going on with Harvard. They are forcing,
Yeah,
they're trying to force Harvard to have like some kind of an administrator that would be like a liaison between the government and Harvard. And the job was of this individual would be to monitor students against any kind of strikes, monitor them for. I mean, basically, you'll be accused of having anti-Semitic sentiments and being expelled from school. So basically, controlling students and not permitting for
that
their
is not a
freedom of
yeah,
expression.
yeah.
And because Harvard refused to succumb, they cut off their higher education funding.
How
So
that is always tanking the nation.
so
That's tank. That's you're tanking. I mean, it's a free fall. You can't be doing that. Instead of us trying to look you know, putting more funding into research, more funding into things in cutting edge technology, more funding into research institutes. You are taking away resources. You are taking away. You are extracting the engine that has turbocharged our economy and maintain it, and people have benefited from it and taken it and built their nations. You are now destroying that the last fabric that we have to maintain or to even give us a voice. Because the only thing you can do is that, and now the way I see it is just like it seems as if we don't change course, they are going to balkanize this nation from the financial perspective where other people are going to just suck out every wealth and then the whole thing crumbles. That's my fear.
and you
But
know,
what we
and you're right. Not just balkanize the nation financially, but balkanize the nation itself, its landmass.
yeah,
You may have a situation where this country ends up being divided
yeah,
in their politics. Like, I mean, when I say divided, I mean like say America splitting into
to
different small
pieces.
countries.
Yeah, because you technically, like I said, the things we should be doing, any nation, any empire, it starts getting rotten from within. The things America had working on is addressing the racial issues within America. For instance, if you ask my opinion, I would say this: go into the black communities that you had extracted well out of those places, come up with some incentives, start creating, giving incentives to create industries into some of those places as a
Invest,
form of, you know, bringing wealth to the disenfranchised population.
and even as a form of social
Because
justice.
wealth was specifically sucked out of those areas. You can
Yeah,
go
even
and you have a reconstruction.
yeah, as a form of social justice.
Can you hear me?
I
It
can
seems
hear
as
you
if we have
very
a
well.
glitch.
I can hear you very well. Can you hear me?
Okay, I can hear you now.
Yeah, I
Go
was
ahead.
saying that
Sorry.
as a form of social justice too.
Yeah, you get it. There are things we can do to, first of all, heal the nation from within. Look into those different enfranchised areas that you know of. There are red line areas in this country where they sucked out wealth from it. Address those inequalities from within the nation. It might take a while, but you have to understand that there are ways you can do it. Bring in economic incentives in those areas. Put in some companies that can help those areas to pick up. And one of the things that is very blunt, is very true about is that if America wants to turn the corner and turbocharge, incentivize the black population, they have creativity and knowledge that's unmatched. Incentivize them, encourage technical colleges, bring it to those type of places, put in companies in those areas. When you put in companies in those areas that can help them to even revive or gain some economic strength, showing that you are even trying to address their issues, you heal the nation from within. That's the first
Absolutely.
thing. Secondly, you figure out how to incentivize education. Third, on an external phase, you do what we call win-win strategy. America will never meet up with China if they don't implement the notion of win-win. You don't take hammer and you move into places like, comrade, can you get me?
Very well. Very well.
Okay. You don't take the policy of going to places like Burkina Faso with a hammer and a sledgehammer to go and hammer them. to take. No, it doesn't work that way. This now that currently in the world, they tried that with Afghanistan. We came out with nothing. We lost trillions of dollars there. We came out with nothing. We are not even in control of Afghanistan. Libya that we, I mean, Iraq that we went into in there. We don't control Iraq the way America would have wanted to control it. So this because we went there with a sledgehammer. So we have to change course. Start looking at China. They use soft power. Go in with what can I have this deal? What can I give you? These are the things that I think it can help improve your people's economy. I need this. That's the same. That if you want to match China, that is the only way you can match China. Encourage education, encourage research and research institutes, incentivize, provide funding to educational systems. When you do that, you strengthen your research and development system within your country. When you are dealing with the external world, work on the premise of win-win. Then we can have a place and a space in the multipolar world that is coming.
Absolutely. Right now, countries are not going to allow you to come in and just basically use the hammer on them.
Nope.
If you're looking for friends.
Yeah, because the contrary between the two, the contrast between is okay, China is coming with deals, but you're coming with the military and the hammer and to dictate on them. That's why they are failing, and we have to change course. Okay, come. I know we've been taking a little bit of time. One last thing before I ask you this question: with the current trade tariffs, with the current situation in the world, coming back to Ambazonia, what lessons should we be taking down as we journey to our independence, as we are going towards the learning airport? What lessons can Ambazonia be taking from the current geopolitics, what is happening in Sahel, what is happening with the tariff war, and what are the things you can summarize in relation to Ambazonia and the current happenings in the world as we make this journey, as we're about to touch to touch ground on our independence? Because if you don't have a good footing before you land, you might land wrongly. And if you don't have a good footing to build the foundation that we need to build, we'll start off wrongly. We'll still suffer the same quagmire that most African nations are suffering from. So what can you give as a lesson, and what have we learned so far with all what is happening in the current situation in the world?
I would say that one lesson is to always have friends, people that you can have, countries that you can call your friends, because they will not only support you during the times of need, but in the event that you have all these stronger powers that are coming after you, at least you would have some you will not feel isolated. Like they come in, they use the tactics of isolation. One of the ways that Russia survived all of this bombardment of sanctions was because especially India and China stood by them. Their trade between China and India, China and Russia went from something around say 120 billion US dollars to now 425 billion US dollars just within this last 2-3 years of war. And then trade between Russia and also India did the same, skyrocketed. Obviously, they had BRICS. That was a huge support for them too. So have friends. The other thing is that, I've always known this, but I don't know that I put in a lot of currency to it. The fact that this is just a game of interest. That no matter how much we as Ambazonia cry of the number of death and destruction that is being brought to bear on us, it is not about the refugees. It is not about the suffering people of Ambazonia. It's not about any of that. It's about power. It's about interest.
Yep.
So Ambazonia has to get to a place where, as we prepare, we equally strengthen our capacity. We build capacity. We strengthen ourselves. Then we equally, on the other hand, you talked about win-win situations, having opportunity to have partners that can provide to us win-win that is all a game of interest, that it has nothing to do with number of refugees or
Yep.
humanitarian aspects of. I mean, sometimes that could be used as an excuse or as a basis for some action, but definitely not the primary. Uh, and then another issue is that we should stay on the communication path. We need to continue to, like when I went to school, they were teaching about Zingraph and about Mongo Park, and so their position, by the time a child gets to 10 years old, the psyche is about or already has been twisted to demonstrate that somebody else is better than them.
Yeah.
So in our education, in our communication, in our media, we need to continue to uh, pres- to go against the propaganda, or at least to show the other side of things that would educate our people. I got into an Uber, and the driver of this Uber was a Ghanaian, and the Ghanaian was talking about just how he didn't like these individual juntas in because they were not democratically elected, and it's not democracy. This is military takeover. So that kind of education, that kind of mindset, it's not good at all. So understanding of every situation, understanding of these issues, um, be, helping to push away that propaganda, I think it's always very important, because if these individuals had known the background and know the things, why these individuals, why these military guys took over power, and the things that they've done to revolutionize not just the region, but to bring in, as we started this conversation with, empowering the spirit of change that is now happening, not just across Africa, actually, across the world. So I think that's another aspect that we should be informed of, and then we should be informed of the power of negotiations. Um, as we move forward, we should really arm ourselves with, um, because I've been watching very closely the tactics that the American government is using to negotiate with not just Iran, but the negotiations that they've done with Hamas, the kind of negotiation that they do with Hezbollah, and what they're doing with Russia. On the one hand, they come in, they present themselves as, so this is what, okay, look at what happened with, let's take the Hezbollah situation, for example. Um, they call for a ceasefire, and they send information to the Hezbollah guys that this is what our offer looks like. And then Hania calls this is the Hezbollah leader in Lebanon, calls his lieutenants for a meeting. And while they're gathered in that meeting, Israel bombs them. So, I mean, these are guys that we're talking about negotiation. So we should always have in the back of our minds, when we are looking at the things that are presented to us as a form of negotiation, ask questions, dig very deep, because it's very easy to be fooled along the line. So yeah, I'll leave it here. It looks like you had something to
I
add.
think I lost you.
I'm sorry. I just said that I would leave it here because, in case you had something to add. That I'll leave it here in case you had something to add.
Hello? I think I lost you. I believe that there's some internet connectivity issues.
Oh man.
Okay.
Can
No,
you
it's
hear me?
okay. Okay, I get you now.
Yeah.
I can hear you now.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'll leave it here
There's
in case you had something to add.
No. You make some really salient points. One, as we journey through this struggle for independence, I rightfully said, it is not about how many people have been killed. The war is not ruled by sympathy. It is ruled by strength. And if you look at it very well from an Ambazonian perspective, we have gathered strength and we have made sure that we are not going anywhere. That's why at times they even call us to talk to us. That's what we still tell Ambazonians. Arm the fighters on the ground. Pay your liberation tax on the ground. You need to know that the world, you can only have a voice when you project strength. That's all. We should get out the notion of, oh, this one has been killed. No. We protect them, provide them with the firepower, and then we can use that firepower to talk. The world is ruled by power, strength. And that's why when we started this whole thing and the ADF went straight into self-defense and to fight to own our destiny. It wasn't like a joke. You don't negotiate this type of, how do you call it, real estate so rich that we don't even know how much wealth we have. You don't negotiate it, we talk. No, you negotiate with strength. You seize what is yours from a thief in broad daylight. You don't plead. That's the first thing Ambazonia have to understand. So what we are on the right course. Contribute. You are put in your money if you
Put
want
in
to
your
own
money.
Ambazonia.
Put in
Yes,
your money.
yes. If you want to own Ambazonia, put in your money.
There
Secondly,
there will be lots of conversations that are happening in terms of some kind of negotiation going on. Do not trust that. Put in it.
no, it's the
Talk
power.
to the Ambazonian Defense Forces. Talk to
Yes,
the Ambazonian Governing Council. Find
yes,
to their members. Look for a mission to join and make your
yes,
contributions. Make I mean there will be avenues towards you paying your taxes. Make your contributions
yes,
towards the diplomatic offensive. If you're worried
yes,
about all other forms of contributions, know that you're
yes.
it's going for the defense for the fun for the advancement of the diplomacy.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And then secondly, what Ambazonians must understand is that we must be self-sufficient. We must move into the space of self-sufficiency as we learn, as we journey through it. And as we're about to learn, the pillars of Ambazonia will be self-sufficiency. Because if you look at the current world, if you cannot feed and take care of people and be self-sufficient, you don't have a place, you don't have a voice in the world. Third, as rightfully said, we must have the power to protect all our boundaries. As the president has always said, we must have the ability to protect the last inch of Ambazonia physically with power. There is nothing we have to, there is no softness in this world. The world is ruled with interest, the world is ruled with strength. You must have good negotiators, people that can stand and talk and mean what they say, people who cannot just give in their all. We have been smacked around in Africa because they didn't give us the opportunity to negotiate whatever we have. That's why you see the AES countries and the other part people who are charting the pathway of negotiating for what they own. They are becoming a problem to the jackals who came into Africa. So us, as Ambazonians, those are the things we have to be gearing towards. But what we need to be doing as a matter of urgency now is contributing money to continue to increase the firepower on the ground. Negotiations can stall if there is no firepower on the ground. They can call us to talk, or no matter whatever diplomatic push we are putting, if we don't show the strength and the control on the ground, then it's just for nothing. Let's all be putting in the resources for the diplomatic push and also for the firepower on the ground. The president did something, and the AGOVC has done something that is very unique in this evolution. Self-funding, paying our liberation tax. If you cannot self-fund to fight and free yourselves, then you are fighting a futile war. I know that when you look at the AGOVC, one thing I have to say is that I'll say end up by going back to television. We have been the most surgical organization in this revolution. We knew that funding from external funding only would not sustain this. So that's why we came up with another means of divider. Everybody is putting in his own piece. And that's what is taking this war to the next level. That's why we're the most attacked organization, internally and externally. Those tools that we apply, they are very, very surgical and very, very, important and strategic. Let our people pay in a liberation tax, increase the strength and firepower on the ground. It's not pity that's going to free us, but it's the strength that we exert on the ground that's going to free Ambazonia. So, comrade, I know that you are tired. You just came. You have to do this live under pressure. So, what can you summarize for with this our outing before we go offline?
First, I wanted to extend my gratitude. We've been talking about doing this presentation for a little while. I hope that we'll continue to find time, get on, and continue to educate our people. I will say that we should continue to stand firm, believing that there is light at the end of the tunnel, because you cannot give up on your own destiny. You cannot give up on your own future. You cannot give up on your own path. Ambazonia is a very, very blessed nation. Only in put what do they call that bay? They say there is about 1.5 trillion cubic feet of LNG stored right there, and that could power Ambazonia, power the entire African continent. As a matter of fact, And we're not even talking here all of the oil deposits that are in the in the Delta area, like Bakassi, Idaboto, and the rest, and all of Indian. We're not even talking about that yet. So each Ambazonian is so endowed that you cannot even believe just how rich you are. You just have to kind of take your destiny, take what is your inheritance in your own hand, and you cannot give up on your inheritance, rushing and crossing the Sahel, the desert, to go die in the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
So, in which case, think about how you can contribute towards this struggle today to bring it to its logical conclusion. There is a lot that is happening in the rest of the world. I would just say that do not, never trust anyone that comes to you say, "I'm here to help." You have to kind of think about the fact that they are there for their own interests, and as always, look for ways that you can make that judgment and find a win-win situation in
Yeah.
which to help in that case. Overall, I would also go back to to what Ibrahim Traore stands for, the education that he's been providing to all of Africa, the
Mhm.
need to stand firm, the spirit of change that he brings, the thought process that he executes, thought in terms of he does not only think about himself, not being selfish, he's thinking about his people. He's building this, providing the infrastructure that is needed, the housing that is needed, the jobs that are needed,
The roads,
providing
the
that support, the
healthcare,
roads,
the
the
healthcare.
healthcare. So we should all always think of that light as opposed to thinking individually
Mhm.
about the money that someone is coming to pay us and make us individually rich without the collective. And as a matter of fact, then you walk with maybe with the big stomach, and then you see others that are there cannot even find food to eat. We should always think about the collective, how we can help all Amazonians, all its people, all its children to grow. But in summary, we should keep abreast of the politics that is happening in the rest of the world because one way or the other, it directly impacts us. An educated population cannot easily be manipulated.
Yep.
So, thank you, comrade, and thanks again for having me.
Thanks very much, comrade. I really appreciate you spending some time with me just to have this conversation. I'll end this note on one particular statement, and it comes from our prophet. I call Ibrahim Traore a prophet. I call him a prophet, and I'll end it with one statement that comes out of his mouth. I usually uses homeland or death. We are going to make sure that we own our homeland, Ambazonia, or death comes our pathway. I always say this: what matters as a mass of protoplasm that moves on Earth as human beings is not how much he accrues, it's the legacy that he leaves behind. They talk about people 3,000 years ago because of the legacy that they left behind. So to Ambazonians, are you going to just wither away as a mass of protoplasm, or are you going to leave a positive legacy behind where our future generation can talk good about us and our spirits will be, high and smiling wherever we are by the time we leave this world? It's a question that we all have to answer. Homeland with all its freedom or death. That's I'll end it with what Traore always says. Thanks very much, comrade. Thanks a lot. I know it's challenging navigating through the Western world with our responsibilities, our task, and everything. Just making some time to be able to educate our people or have this conversation and open our people's mind. If you don't have an educated and a knowledgeable an awareness society, I mean, you don't understand what is happening to them and how to be able to evaluate and assess situations as they come up. We will keep on doing this. We'll keep on finding time to keep on educating our people about what is happening out of the boundaries of Ambazonia, and we'll trying that, making sure that our people are also catching up with some of these discussions. Thank you very much, comrade, and have a blessed night.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Welcome to ACN.
Ambazonia will be offered to you tomorrow. Will you be ready? Will you be ready for governance? Do you have the institutions and expertise in terms of human capacity and state institutions to transform that space into one where our children can say, we fought a good fight? The reason why we are here is not simply because we want to create an alternative platform or pull our resources together. It's because we reject fraud. I don't know why you fight. I know all of us say we fight for independence, and I always remind you, independence is an abstract political construct. You fight for that abstract political construct, not as an objective. There are the micro issues within that political construct that you fight for. The right as a woman to have equal rights within your own country, to have opportunity in terms of education, to have a good health system that can take care of the weak and the sick, stop a woman dying every minute and giving birth. Those are the real issues we fight for. We fight for transparency. I invite every one of you to reject fraud. Reject it from the depth of your heart, and no matter what the opponent, the violent minority tells you.
Welcome to ACN.
And if we are cowards, our children will ask us questions. Imagine if in Burkina we refuse to fight and we accept to submit to live in slavery. Tomorrow our children will grow up. They will ask questions. Were our parents cowards to leave us in slavery? Whether we are alive or dead, we will feel it. The coward is afraid. And the imperialists have understood. They try to instill fear in the leaders so that you become cowards. Because when you are a coward, all other vices can arise. They do everything to make us afraid. They come into our palaces. They threaten us directly or with veiled threats. Of course, we respond as we should. They always take examples. They will tell us, you know, Thomas Sankara tried to do it like this, but where is he? He is dead. The Haitian president, he tried to do it like this. Where is he? He is dead. Gaddafi tried like this. Where is he? He is dead. These are the veiled statements made to us to instill fear. And then we also often see some young people trying to follow in the footsteps in a different way. You can hear them say, such a person ruled like this, he has the sepulchre. Such a person ruled like this, he is in prison. All this to try to scare us, to make us cowards. I think they haven't understood something. When we say the homeland or death, we shall overcome, it's not just a phrase, it has its full meaning. We are not afraid and we will never be afraid. We will continue our struggle. They have undoubtedly and surely scared numerous African heads of state. You often see when we speak or when we have the opportunity to be in certain situations abroad, we often make statements to call on African heads of state to wake up, take care of our youth, to be able to initiate our real development. We are often misunderstood. Some have responded publicly to our statements because they feel targeted. But I can assure you, youth, that when we find ourselves in their corridors, these same heads of state tell us, you are on the right track. This is what needs to be done for Africa to feel empowered. So we ask them questions about why you don't do as we do, why you don't support us. Some tell us they are entangled, some tell us they cannot. Dear elders, African heads of state, from this platform, I would like to say that African people are the most peaceful people. When you recognize the wrong, you must tell the people. Let us not be afraid tomorrow to go out and tell the people. We apologize. We have been compromised. We have ill-gotten gains. We have been constrained by many things, and we ask for forgiveness and return to the right path. And to start truly working for the independence of our states and our emancipation. And I believe it is possible. If we remain in this posture of fear, we will be cowards, and history will judge us. Our children will ask questions, our grandchildren will ask questions. We are writing history. There is no room for cowardice. If our ancestors had been cowards, we would not be here.
Welcome to ACN.